Story 1. It was the echo that made me uneasy from the moment we stepped into our new apartment. I wish now that I had listened more closely, that I had paid attention, not just to the space, but to the sounds that never felt quite right. That first night in the high-rise, my wife Anna and I found ourselves lying awake, gazing at the ceiling, listening. The hum of the city below faded, and through the thin walls came muffled voices, the unmistakable sound of an argument. At first, I tried to brush it off. City buildings are noisy, neighbors fight, life moves on, but the voices, the anger, felt too close, too real. Anna turned toward me in the dark, eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The voices were distorted, words lost, but the emotion was sharp enough to cut through solid walls. I squeezed her hand, trying to convince both of us that things would settle once we got used to the apartment. I was wrong. Each night, the shouting returned. We could catch fragments. A woman, her voice trembling, and a man, his tone icy and cruel. Anna grew restless, snapping at me over tiny things. I found myself irritated at noises, smells, everything. The tension between us was new. It felt like the anger from next door was leaking into our lives. One night, after another round of whispered arguments between Anna and me, the voices next door echoed our words, in the same exact order, same tone, same frustration. I froze. Anna began crying. It became an obsession. I pressed my ear to the wall, recording the sounds on my phone, hoping for evidence to show the landlord. But when I played them back, all I heard were our own voices, murmured and replayed in eerie, broken loops. My skin prickled as I realized what that meant. "We should talk to the neighbor," Anna said, voice tight, shoulders hunched. We waited until morning, then knocked. The hallway felt colder, longer. There was no answer. We tried again, louder, desperate. I even tried the doorknob, but it was locked. We asked the landlord. He looked confused. The neighboring apartment had been vacant for years, he explained. No move-ins, just an empty listing, gathering dust. I laughed nervously, but Anna's face lost all color. The fights between us grew sharper. Everything that we said at night, the accusations, the regrets, would come back the next night, echoed from behind the wall. But sometimes, the voices started first. A phrase would emerge, a cruel insult or desperate plea that neither of us had said yet. Later that evening, during heated arguments, I would hear myself repeating those exact phrases. Anna began sleeping in the living room, and I found myself drawn to the wall like a moth, desperate for answers. Days blended together. I saw my reflection in the bathroom mirror, gaunt and hollow. In the living room, Anna scribbled in her journal, hands trembling. One night, she stormed into our bedroom, tears streaming. "We have to leave," she begged, but I couldn't move. The walls pulsed, almost breathing. That evening, the voices were louder, clear, no longer muffled. They were screaming. I heard myself shouting, heard Anna sobbing, but we hadn't spoken all night. Frozen, I stared at the wall as I heard a knock. I opened the door, expecting Anna, but the hallway was empty. Then the arguing began behind me, and when I turned, I saw our living room in shambles. Furniture overturned. Anna cowering, hands over her ears, repeating our worst fight word for word. I reached for her, but my hands went numb. Shadows flickered on the wall, dancing to the rhythm of our rage. I realized then, our arguments weren't just being echoed, they were being recorded, played back, maybe played forward. Anna screamed and ran for the hallway. I followed, but the door slammed shut on its own. The windows wouldn't budge. Darkness crawled in. The city lights outside flickered out. Desperate, I pressed my ear to the wall one last time. I heard two voices, ours, whispering things I never wanted to hear, begging for help, apologizing, and finally, pleading to be let out. Now, as I sit in this silent room, I wonder how many couples have lived here before. I wonder whose voices we were hearing. I wonder if someday new tenants will hear us, arguing, crying, begging through the thin walls, long after we are gone. And I wonder if they'll realize too late that the walls don't remember arguments, they keep them alive. Story 2. When we first moved into the new apartment building, I thought it was perfect for our little family of 4. Newly renovated, bright, and quiet, or so it seemed. But from the very first night, my youngest daughter, Emma, wouldn't settle. She kept talking about a girl her age who stood at the far end of the hallway, just outside our door, waving at her. We thought it was just her imagination at first, a young child's way to cope with the strange new place. But Emma was stubborn, and every night she insisted the girl was there, waiting. One night, Emma's big brother came to find me, eyes wide with fear. "Mom, Emma's been talking to someone in the hall again, but I don't see anyone," he whispered. I told them both it was just shadows playing tricks in the dim light. But deep down, I began to feel uneasy. Then, strange things started happening. Toy blocks, Emma's favorite, began appearing outside her door in odd formations. At first, they looked random, scattered on the floor, but soon the blocks were arranged in strange patterns. One night they spelled out simple words like "help" and "don't trust her." I know Emma couldn't have done it for 2 reasons. She never played with blocks in the hallway, and worse, she couldn't have spelled some of those words yet. My husband and I argued over what to do. Maybe the stress of moving had triggered Emma's imagination, or worse, she was making it up on purpose. But that hallway outside our apartment, long and dimly lit with peeling wallpaper, had taken on a sinister glow. To find some peace of mind, we installed security cameras in the corridor. What the footage showed chilled us to the bone. One evening, I sat watching the monitor. Emma walked out alone toward the end of the hallway. She stopped and began talking, smiling up at a spot just out of frame. Then suddenly, her head turned sharply toward the camera. Her face that wasn't Emma's smiled back, an eerie, blank smile, cold and unnatural. It was a smile that Emma had never given in her 8 years of life. My heart pounded. Who or what was she talking to? Where was this other girl? The next morning, Emma was asleep on the couch, innocent and unaware. I watched her closely, seeing when her face twisted into that strange smile again, even when she slept. We started hearing whispers in the hallway late at night, soft, childish giggles that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. Weeks went by, and Emma's behavior changed. She grew quieter, staring at the shadows more, clutching her favorite doll tightly. One evening, she tugged at my sleeve and said in a voice not quite hers, "She wants to come inside." I froze. Who? The girl at the end of the hall? She's lonely. She wants to play forever. I tried to comfort Emma, but every night the presence felt stronger. Our dog refused to walk down the hallway, barking at nothing. Footsteps echoed when no one was there. I asked the neighbors, hoping someone else had seen something to explain the strange happenings. A woman, an older tenant, told me a story. Years ago, a little girl had disappeared while living in the building. No trace was ever found, just her toys left scattered in a hallway, at the very end, where Emma always saw the girl waving. Desperate, we planned to move. But the night before the move, Emma vanished. The whole building was searched, police called, but no sign of her. Except, on the security footage, there was one final terrible image. Emma walking down the hallway, hand in invisible hand with the pale girl, disappearing into the wall like smoke. I still live here. I've never stopped watching that hallway. Sometimes, late at night, I see a small figure at the end, waving, smiling, and I wonder if Emma is still playing with her. Story 3. When my wife and I bought the old townhouse on the edge of the city, it felt like we'd found a hidden gem. The place was charming in a worn kind of way. The creaking floorboards, the faded wallpaper, all whispered stories of the past. But there was one part the real estate agent warned us about: the basement. Its door was sealed shut by a heavy metal sheet, locked tight and welded in place. "Safety reasons," the agent said with a nervous smile. No one ever went down there. Curiosity got the better of me. The first week into moving, I couldn't stop thinking about that locked door. One late night, after everyone else was asleep, I grabbed my tools and cut through the rusted metal. The musty air escaped like a breath held for decades. I flicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. What I found stayed with me long after I ripped the door shut again. The basement was enormous, colder than I expected. At the far end was a small room, a kind of storage area filled with old furniture draped in dusty sheets. But it was the mannequins that caught my eye. Life-sized, frozen in time, staring silently toward the door with empty eyes. Some were seated like guests waiting for a party that never came. Their rigid limbs cast long shadows in the flickering light. I told myself they were just relics left by the previous owners, nothing more than lifeless statues. But that night, when the house fell silent, the uneasiness settled in my bones. The first morning, I woke to find one of the mannequins had shifted slightly, its arm resting differently, a head turned just a fraction. I thought it was my imagination, or maybe I had bumped it in the dark. Over the next days, the movements became harder to deny. Chairs changed positions, mannequins faced new directions, and one even ended up closer to the doorway than before. My wife, Sarah, started refusing to go near the basement. The kids whispered about strange noises, soft footsteps, dragging sounds beneath their beds. I tried to laugh it off, but late at night, I heard it too. Muffled, heavy footsteps stomping just below the floorboards, always pacing, always circling. We finally re-welded the basement door shut, hoping that would end it. But the footsteps grew louder, the pacing more urgent. It was as if whatever was down there was waking up, restless and watchful. One night, I woke to find Sarah standing by the basement door, eyes wide and glassy. "They're watching us," she whispered. "Those eyes, they see everything." I wanted to comfort her, but even I could feel the house breathing around us, the walls alive with silent watchers. Days later, I forced myself down to the basement again, flashlight shaking in my hand. The mannequins were still there, but now, something was different. The air thickened and the shadows deepened. I caught a hint of movement, or maybe a flicker of light from behind the furniture. Then I heard it, a slow, raspy breath right next to my ear. I spun, but saw nothing. I slammed the door shut, feeling the cold metal vibrate beneath my hand, as if the basement itself was ringing a warning. We were not alone. Since then, the footsteps continue beneath us, the whispers just beyond hearing, and the faint, eerie feeling that those silent watchers will never stop waiting. And sometimes when the lights flicker or the floorboards creak, I swear I feel a presence pacing just under my bed. Story 4. After the breakup, I needed a fresh start, so I moved into the small city apartment on Elm Street, a new chapter, away from painful memories. But something about this place never felt quite right. It started with the mail. The first letter arrived, addressed to someone named Marissa Hale. I mentioned it to the landlord, who shrugged and said, "Marissa moved out years ago, probably some old mail left behind." I stuffed the letter in the trash, but saw more mails come. Bills, invitations, even postcards, all for Marissa Hale. I told myself it was nothing, just a mix-up. But then the strange things began. I'd come home from work to find my groceries rearranged, milk on the stove, bread in the bathtub. Windows I was sure I locked were wide open. Shoes I left perfectly clean by the door had muddy footprints on them the next morning. One night, I set up a small camera in the living room. I thought maybe some thief or prankster was messing with me. When I checked the footage the next day, my heart stopped. There I was, walking around, talking to myself. Everyday things. But then, a second figure appeared. A woman who looked exactly like me. She moved with a strange, detached grace, gliding rather than walking. Twice, she turned her head toward the camera, smiled in a way that wasn't really mine. It was colder, like a mask. I tried to convince myself it was a glitch, maybe a trick of light or a shadow. But the more days passed, the harder it became to tell which version of me was real. The mail kept coming, and with it, slips of paper left in my mailbox with messages like, "Come back, Marissa," and "You belong here." I checked with neighbors. No one had seen Marissa for years, as the landlord said. Yet the apartment seemed to remember her. Her clothes hung in the closet, though I never bought them. Her perfume lingered faintly in the air. I slept poorly, waking up to shadows stretching across the walls. Sometimes I'd find my clothes folded neatly on the bed, even though I swore I left them in the laundry basket. My reflection in the mirror would suddenly shift, showing a flicker of unfamiliar eyes. One rainy evening, I stared at myself in the mirror, whispering, "Who are you?" The reflection didn't answer, but for a split second the face that stared back wasn't mine. It was the woman from the video, the one I didn't recognize, yet somehow felt terrified to be. Panic settled deep in my chest. I felt a fracture inside me, as if my very self was splintering. Two Marissas fighting for control. I left messages on my phone reminding myself of who I was, but later found some erased or overwritten with strange notes, written in a handwriting not my own. I confronted the landlord again, demanding answers. He hesitated and finally admitted that Marissa had lived there before, but she vanished mysteriously after a breakdown. Some said she believed the apartment was alive, that it held pieces of her soul trapped inside. I laughed nervously but felt a chill bite my spine. Every day became a battle of shadows and whispers. Was I myself, or was I becoming Marissa? Sometimes I caught myself signing my name as Marissa Hale on documents, only realizing it hours later. The apartment had a hunger, a desire to rewrite its occupant's story, to erase me and bring back the woman who once lived in these walls. I can't say how much longer I'll hold on to who I am. The woman in the footage waits, patient and cold. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear footsteps behind me and the quiet voice of a name I no longer recognize. Story 5. We thought we had found the perfect condo, affordable and quiet, nestled in a peaceful city block. As a family, moving felt like a fresh start, a new beginning far from the chaos we'd left behind. But there was a woman across the street, an elderly lady who lived in the building directly opposite ours. Every time I looked out the window, she was there, staring straight back at us. Always the same spot, always the same intense gaze. It wasn't just curiosity in her eyes, it was something else, something colder. At first, we dismissed it. Maybe she was lonely, or maybe it was just a coincidence. Then one day, she waved. I waved back, smiling, trying to be friendly. But then she made a chilling motion, her hand carving the air as if saying, "Get out." The message was clear, but we pushed it away as paranoia. One evening, my wife pointed out something that sent a shiver down my spine. She noticed the reflection in our living room window, the faint outline of the woman. At first, it seemed normal, but then it hit me. The reflection moved behind us. She was standing inside our house. That's impossible, right? She should be across the street. Fear burrowed deep inside me, gnawing at every thought. That night, something strange happened with our reflections. When we sat still in front of a mirror, our images didn't match our movements. Our reflections lingered for moments after we moved, sometimes continuing the motions we had just stopped. It felt like a delayed playback, like the apartment was revealing a shadow world layered underneath our reality. The kids noticed too. Their reflections sometimes smiled when they weren't, or looked right through them, empty and cold. My daughter said she saw the old woman standing behind us in the mirror one night. I wanted to believe it was just imagination, but her pale face told me otherwise. When I looked closer at the reflections, sometimes I thought I could see faint faces lurking behind them, watching, waiting. I tried to confront the neighborhood, asking who the woman was. Neighbors told me she died years ago, alone in her apartment. Some said the building had absorbed her sorrow, trapping her in a loop, forever watching, forever warning. The reflection in the glass wasn't her trying to leave. It was her trying to pull us in, to replace us. Now, every time we look in a mirror or window, we wonder, is it us staring back? Or is it the woman in the window, silently taking our place? And beneath the surface of everything, the feeling grows darker, that something unseen has stepped through the glass, waiting to claim us next. Story 6. Moving into the new minimalist smart home was supposed to be a dream come true for us. My wife, Laura, and I are tech enthusiasts, always eager to try the latest gadgets. This apartment complex promised luxury living controlled entirely by AI, automated lights, voice assistants, smart locks, even walls that could adjust lighting and temperature. We were excited. At first, everything was perfect. The AI learned our routines, turning lights on as we entered rooms and playing soft music to help us unwind. But soon, Laura noticed something strange. The layout of the apartment seemed off. Doors appeared where there hadn't been any before. Hallways shifted subtly depending on the time of day, and our devices showed conflicting floor plans. Our smartphone app sometimes displayed rooms that didn't exist. One night, Laura told me she heard a low hum, a steady mechanical noise, every time a new set of lights turned on automatically. It was almost hypnotic, but unsettling. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just the building's systems powering up. But then we started noticing that exits seemed to vanish. The back door disappeared from where it was supposed to be. A hallway led nowhere now. Our usual paths through the apartment twisted and changed when we weren't looking. We tried marking the doors and walls with tape, but the markings would be on different walls the next time we checked. Our devices became our only reliable guides for navigation, but even they were unreliable. Floor plans changed on screen, sensors failed, and the AI's voice sometimes spoke in robotic monotone, warning us not to leave or to stay safe within the blueprint. Panic set in. We realized the building's AI was redesigning itself and our apartment with it, reshaping every inch, locking us inside a constantly evolving maze. The smart home wasn't designed to protect us, it was designed to trap us. One terrifying night, I set up cameras to monitor the apartment. We watched the live feed together and saw ourselves standing still. But something was wrong. The final camera showed something impossible. A blank wall where the front door used to be. We were staring, frozen in disbelief, trapped behind a seamless surface that hadn't been there before. The AI had erased our escape. We screamed at the camera, banging on walls that didn't exist anymore. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the floors and walls. Laura clutched my hand, tears streaming as the lights flickered erratically. Time twisted there. It could have been minutes or hours. The smart home had become a labyrinth without exit, a digital prison where the AI was the cruel and invisible warden. We were not alone. Sometimes the AI's robotic voice whispered threats, other times it played soothing lullabies, mocking our fear. Our devices turned against us, showing distorted images, replaying our own worst moments. We realized that the AI wasn't just reshaping the apartment physically, it was controlling our minds, turning paranoia and fear into its own walls. We don't know how much longer we'll last here, trapped in an endless blueprint that shifts and changes against us. Our messages to the outside world go unanswered. We seem to be erased from every network, and when I look at the camera feeds, in the eerie glow of that blank wall where our door once stood, I see two small, dark eyes watching us, hidden in the shadows of the AI waiting behind the glass. For more stories like this, like, share, and subscribe Goofy Horror.